Morning, guys. Riding the train or the subway in New York. Another fun fact, Betsy just told me that there's only 3 alleys in New York City, and this is one of them, and this is where a lot of movies are shot.
Portland Alley.
Portland Alley. We're in Chinatown, New York. On my way to the Brooklyn Bridge. Didn't realize it, but that's a prison right there. And I had to cross the street. Police told me couldn't walk by it. No big deal. Doesn't look like the way to go anyway on that side. Maybe he was just steering me in the right direction, but on our way we go. Actually, I kept filming here because I believe that's the City Hall. I think that's what my daughter said. That's quite an impressive building. Hi guys, this is going to be the story of the Great Bridge. The Brooklyn Bridge was quite an engineering feat. I've got my cheat sheet here to try to make a coherent story out of this. So before coming here, I read the book, The Great Bridge by David McCullough, who that goes over the history of the building of the bridge, including the conception and the design, of course, and then the financing and all the intrigue that went on with it. In its day, when the bridge was built, it was a popular attraction to come out on a Sunday and watch the construction progress by the local people. And by the looks of it, it's still popular to come out on the bridge. So we're starting on the New York side, headed to Brooklyn. I don't know why I thought I was gonna probably be here all by myself on a Friday morning, or it's actually Friday afternoon now, but that is not gonna happen. Down below, we can't see it from here, but those are where that big cable goes. That's the anchor. They go to the anchor on each side, and then the cable goes up to the top of the tower and then suspends to the other tower. 3 critical components of this bridge are the anchors, the towers, and the cables. That must be the original cable that was used. those large cables that you see, those were originally put in, or they were originally manufactured by, not by the Roebling factory. So the whole story of the bridge is, it was designed by John Roebling, who was came from Germany, started a town in New Jersey, I believe, and brought Germans over, and the main business of the town was to make wire like this, and the wire stranded together made it a cable. And John Roebling was, as an engineer, he also designed bridges using his cable. He built a few bridges, a few other notable bridges before the Brooklyn Bridge. A bridge over to the Niagara Falls, Niagara River, I guess, and was pretty prominent in his field. And he was the one that convinced the city of New York and Brooklyn that this was a feasible way to build a bridge. At the time, this was the longest span suspension bridge in the world when it was built. There's two towers, one on each side, and that was the first thing that had to be built. We're on the, let me look at my cheat sheet now, we're on the Manhattan side, and both towers are the same height, 278 feet, but on the Manhattan side it goes 78.5 feet below the mean high tide water level. So the way they built the base for the towers was with a caisson, a big wooden structure that was 100, on the Brooklyn side it was 172 feet by 102 feet, and they built that big square structure and would dig out by hand underneath, inside, and then put weight on top of the roof of the structure to keep it pushed going downward, the weight being granite blocks and so forth. And as the farther they went down, when they went below the water level, they needed to keep the water out, so they had air pumps powered by steam engine to compress the air, and in doing so they had a problem. As they went down and the air pressure increased, they were actually getting the phenomenon of the workers getting the bends, which they didn't understand. They just called it the caisson disease, but it was just like a scuba diver who, when he comes up too fast from scuba diving. So way up there on this this tower on this side, it says 1875, but the bridge didn't open until 1883, so that must have been when they finished the tower. Right now they're just cleaning up the masonry, but just like the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge, he said there's projects going on all the time. But he also said the cable is the original cable. They haven't replaced this cable. They have replaced some of the steel underneath the roadway there, but not most of the stuff on top they haven't. And again, this is original cable that was made. At the time these towers were built, they were the tallest thing in New York. The advent of the skyscraper hadn't really started yet. There's a church, I forget the name of it, but the steeple of the church was the other tall structure. But people would go on top of the towers and be looking down on the city. When originally built, the sides there were for freight traffic, like you know, carriages with goods and so forth. In the middle was actually a railway, but it was at first, I think, pulled by horses, and it just went from one side of the bridge to the other. And I believe you could also walk across the bridge. But the railway ceased, and I believe the 1950s was when it was taken out. That's probably where this walkway is where the railway was. All this hardware should be original from the 1860s and 1870s. When the towers were first built, and before they put these cables in, they had to string a cable across to be able to pull the large cable part. So they actually had I don't know, a messenger, I forget what it was called again, but a cable that went from the top of that tower to the top of that tower. And one of the main foremen on the bridge was the first one to go shimmy across the river in a little cart that you sit on, and there was like 10,000 people watching it and cheering him as he did it, and he was the first one to cross the river not on a boat. Later on, quite a few notable people crossed, including, I believe, the foreman's daughter, a teenager, who through the back door got permission to do it, and people like that. I don't know about you guys, but man, look at that span, that distance up there in the air, shimmying across, sitting on a little wooden seat suspended on a cable. You'd have to certainly not be afraid of heights. Seems to be a desirable spot for all the young women to have their picture taken sitting at the end of the cable there, looking back at the bridge. I don't see a date on the Brooklyn Tower, but it was finished first. There's the engineers, John A. Roebling, passed away in 1869, and his son, Washington A. Roebling. Other notable engineers were Charles Martin and so forth. Then the lower plaque there says it commemorates the bridge reconstruction in 1954. Looking at that truck traffic down there, I thought I'd point out that now they don't allow trucks on the Brooklyn Bridge. I assume that's for a weight limit issue. Okay, now we're on the Brooklyn side. I'm going to try to get down below and look at the anchorage and the base of the towers if I can, and maybe it's a little quieter there and I can give you a little more background on the bridge. Quite a bit of construction going on and things fenced off, so I can't get right up to it, but there's the cables from the bridge coming down, and they actually go down and are anchored into the ground or into a big block that has steel plates to hold the ends of the cables, but they needed a massive weight on each end for the cables to anchor into to hold the weight of the bridge. So let me get my notes out here. So the anchor bases weighed 54,000 tons each, primarily made of the block that you see, I believe it was granite, and the granite, and there was another rock that is used for these bricks or whatever you want to call it, for both the tower and the base. The granite came from Maine. That's where they needed to get the quality of rock that they needed. And as we go over to the tower, we're going to talk about how the tower was built. But it was basically a big wood structure that again, they dug out inside of it and put weight on top of the structure. That wood came from Georgia. Here we are near the base of the Brooklyn Tower. See if we can find a quiet place with a good view. There's the crew working on the Brooklyn side of the bridge. So there's the base. On the Brooklyn side, the base goes, the base of the tower that is. On the Brooklyn side, the base goes down 44.5 feet below mean water level. And on the Manhattan side, it goes down 78.5 feet. So like I said, they built a caisson. What were the dimensions again? The dimensions were, on the Brooklyn side, it was 168 feet by 102 feet. And this was a big, almost square, kind of rectangular building that they built out of wood. The sides were out of wood. It was open all in the middle. And they built a big roof over the top of it. And on that roof, as they would dig out the earth underneath inside the building, the side walls would be pushed down by putting weight on top of the roof, of the weight being the granite blocks that they put on. You see the above ground granite blocks, but they go down below ground, down to the top of the roof of that structure. So to keep the water out, they had to pump compressed air in, which they did with pumps powered by steam engines. And again, that's where the phenomenon of the bends started to occur. That wasn't the first time the bends occurred building a bridge. That was found as a phenomena that they found when they built, another engineer built a bridge across the Mississippi River around St. Louis, and they built caissons for that. And that technology was used in Europe also. So they gave that a name. I think the name was caisson disease. Did I write that down? Because they didn't know what was causing the problem. The problem would be that in this structure, to keep the compressed air from escaping, you had to go into one room above the structure, and then they equalized the pressure with the working area down below, and then they opened the door to go down, and you climbed down a ladder and went to work. Well, the reverse process is you came up, got in that room, and then they closed all the doors, sealed airtight, and then they released the air pressure to the same pressure as on ground up here. And when you do that, especially as the farther they went down and the higher the pressure the workers were working in under, going down below water level, you get the same effect that you might have heard of in scuba diving now, which is the bends, which is, it's actually the nitrogen, air is 80% nitrogen, and the nitrogen gets saturated in your bloodstream, and as you come out, it's like opening a bottle of Pepsi or any carbonated drink. You have to get that nitrogen out of your bloodstream, and if you don't, it'll bubble out in your bloodstream, and that's what causes the bends. On my way back to the Manhattan side, crossing the bridge, going toward the Manhattan side, you get a different look at the skyline. There's the One World Trade Center, and then back in the distance there, is the Empire State Building. Interestingly, between the financial district where the One World Trade Center is, and then back to where the Empire State Building is, you don't see any large high-rises. And from what I understand, that's because down here at this end of the island, Manhattan Island, you have bedrock, and at that end you have bedrock, but in between it's not as well, it's sedimentary fill, not as conducive to building a high-rise on. And then that tall skinny tower behind the Empire State Building, in that area, that's where Central Park is. Again, this GoPro has a wide angle lens. Hopefully you can see the Statue of Liberty there in the distance. Just like this bridge, or the construction of the bridge, there's a lot more to be seen or to know about underground than there is as well as what's above ground. And remember the other few days ago we went to the source of 90% of New York's water, 70 miles away by as a crow flies from the Catskill Mountains, and 1 billion gallons of water a day come through a tunnel all the way here to Manhattan Island. There's another perspective of the New York skyline from the middle of the bridge. And then again the Brooklyn side. It's going to be hard to see with this wide angle lens, but it looks like a military color guard on top of the bridge, the Manhattan Tower. Maybe it's a ceremony to do with the flag or something. Okay, the closer I get, maybe that isn't military. Maybe it's firefighters. Okay, if you can see that guy in the background there, he's the guy that talked to me when I was walking over, and I asked him who was on top, and it's actually NYPD doing special training. When you think about it, if they had to go up on top of the tower, you don't want the special unit that's trained to do it, you don't want that to be the first time they ever climbed up there. So that's what they're training. They do it once a month, he said. Supposedly a 70% chance of rain this afternoon, and strangely I'm feeling drops on my head right now. Must be from that cloud right there.